This
Hello,
meeting is
everybody,
being
and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. Got another of our segments of interviews with executives of junior mining companies. In this case, it's Paycore Minerals, which is a sponsor of my website. And Christina and her team had some important news out just the other day. Thanks for joining us, Christina.
Thank you.
Well, you started out with an $8 million bought deal financing, and you turned that into a $16 million financing, which you just closed.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting. So it was led by CIBC and PI Financial. At the end of the day, we put the news out that we had the bought deal at 8 million. And then overnight, it seemed to be oversubscribed by nearly 3 times, which was really exciting. And so we upsized it to 16 million. And then with the overallotment, we ended up taking just over around 18.5 million. So it was very well received. And I think it puts us in a completely different camp now, where we were a junior exploration company that had around 3 million in the bank, but there was a big exploration project ahead of us. And now that we are fully financed to execute on that project, I think that now, it's a lot of eyes and ears paying attention to the story, because there won't be an opportunity to participate in a financing now for some time. So now it's at work.
Even before this financing and post this financing, you guys have only been trading since April of last year, and you have a very tight share structure.
That's right. So with the overallotment, it'll be around 11.5 million shares that will add to the outstanding shares. We got a great shareholder base that has come in with this bought deal that we did. And I think that the one good thing is, it's funny, you think of a tight share structure, which could be good in a bad market. But in a good market, when people want to buy your stock, it's not as it's a little tougher. Mm-hmm. I think that this bought deal will bring in some of that liquidity, which will be able to give opportunity to additional shareholders that maybe didn't have a chance to play in the prospectus offering.
And was there any warrants attached to that?
There was not.
So that only keeps you under 50 million shares, fully diluted.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah, we had 28 million shares out, and then add another 11.5 million to that.
So was that 28 fully diluted with warrants and options and everything, or?
It was around 29.
29, so 40 million shares.
Yeah.
Wow. Christina, I'm going to bring up my screen share, because as I was preparing for this show, can you see my screen share?
I can.
As I was preparing for this show, I did some looking at your corporate presentation, and there was some really key things that I wanted to bring up, so I thought I'd share this. First of all, here is I-80 Gold. They're beyond this northern boundary of your claim block. And at this old Archimedes oxide pit here, there was historical production. And now I-80 is finding some pretty tremendous stuff on the south side of this pit that I think is also important for you guys, in that they have found a high-grade CRD with high grades of silver, lead, and zinc, with an overprint of high-grade gold, high-grade to bonanza-grade. And then down here, you guys are finding the same thing. High-grade CRD, gold or silver, lead, and zinc, as well as an overprint of high-grade to bonanza grades of gold.
Yeah. So what's interesting, so the Archimedes pit was previously in production by Barrick. It produced about 1.4 million ounces. It's a Carlin deposit. To the south of that, you'll see that Hilltop discovery. that's again what you're referring to as what they've defined as their bonanza CRD discovery. A carbonate replacement deposit is a CRD, just for those that don't know. And so with CRDs, you typically never get gold in the system. It's base metals or polymetallics. So you'll have lead, silver, zinc. The gold that's being influenced on as part of these CRDs here, we believe it's largely associated with that Carlin deposit that you see right there, the Archimedes pit that produced 1.4 million ounces. The Jackson Fault that runs through there and to the south, that's a really exciting target because, again, it's associated with the recent discovery over at I-80. But it's the reason why it was this exact map that you see on the left side of your screen that attracted me to this area, because I read this paper. It was a publication that was published in the 90s and co-authored by 2 PhDs at the University of Arizona and the senior geologist at Barrick. And the idea was that this area has been largely underexplored and untested, and that's because of these fault structures, which is set to the south of that pit, that Jackson Fault there that runs right through our project. It's undercover with alluvial and gravel on top, so it was not known about or tested previously. And there were very few holes that did test it, and they didn't hit the target deep enough. So there's just a few shallow holes. I mean, a handful of them really. And so that was exciting to me because I thought, wow, this project hasn't been drilled in 50, 60 years. And this publication came out in the 90s. So no one's tested this area. And that's what really attracted me to this project. I believe that I-80 uses the same image in their slide as well, and their corporate presentation as well, showing that this system is largely undercover. So on the left side of your screen, that image, the solid line shows the fault structure that's been known about, been tested. And the dotted line is the structure that has been largely untested. I circled that dotted line there. It's a little bit off there, but that dotted line has just been blown up on the right side of your screen there to show you the Jackson Fault. And so if you think about an untested fault structure, it's that to the south, it's been mined for over 100 years and largely associated with these big CRD discoveries. Well, there's a big part of the fault here that's not been tested. So if you look there, it's about 1.5 kilometers from our border north to the Archimedes pit, 1.5 kilometers there that I-80 is testing. And then from our border to the southern end, it's almost 3 kilometers of structure to test. Again, on a structure that's largely untested and underexplored.
Now,
and when you think about a CRD system, you need structure and stratigraphy, because you need the host rock and you need the structure to make a good CRD. And so for us, that's really exciting.
Yeah, and one of the big success stories in the CRD world was Arizona Mining that found the discovery in Arizona. And one of your directors, your chairman, I believe, was involved with that company.
Jim Gowans is the former president and CEO of Arizona Mining, which discovered the Taylor deposit, one of the largest CRD systems in the world. And it sold to South 32 for $1.65 billion. When we saw this project, I thought, and so the Arizona project, Taylor, was about 10% average lead zinc together. This project is coming in higher grade than that. And so when I saw this, I thought this is right up Jim Gowans' alley. Flew out, saw him, showed him this project, and he loved it and joined as our chairman. And that was a huge endorsement for us because he is bar none top 3 metallurgists on the globe. And he just, was part of one of the biggest discoveries of a CRD in the world and the success of selling it. And I wanted him on my team. So when I showed him this and he thought, wow, Chris, this is great, and saw that there was an extra element of this gold mineralization, he joined the team as our chairman. So it's been really great to have him.
It was also great that you were able to organize an interview with me and you and Jim not too long ago. And people can find that on my YouTube channel at Rocks and Stocks News, or on my Substack at rocksandstocks.substack.com. And one of the key things that we talked about, and you mentioned earlier, was what you need to make important CRD discovery. These faults for the non-geo out there are the conduits or the cracks in the earth that allow those fluids to come up. Then they need to get into a rock packages that are permeable or sort of like a sponge, if you will. And there's a corridor that goes from beyond the hilltop of faulting and the right kind of rock packages, as you can see from here in this faulting. So, and then of course, the most important thing is mineralization. You and I-80 Gold at Hilltop have those boxes checked off quite dramatically.
That's right. And that's remember, that's in addition to what we've already discovered over on the FAD main zone, because the FAD main zone right now already has 3.5 tons and it's around 5 grams gold, 200 grams silver. There you go, right there. If you just go back one slide there. Yeah, it's, keep going down. One more down, right there. That's
this one
right there. Yes, you can see right there. It's almost 12% combined lead zinc, and that's just in that red circle area. Okay, that's where that 3.5 million tons is right now. And you have to remember that is a historic resource. But when Hecla did that, so that's all underground drilling that Hecla did, they actually defined it as ore reserves. It's not inferred and M&I. They deemed it ore reserves at the time, and they put that into their 1974 feasibility report.
Now,
and
there's
so
a couple things to point out here. 8% zinc and 3.8% lead. You're getting into the grade here that the Taylor deposit had. Then you've got 200 grams of silver and 5 grams of gold in that known resource.
That's right. And we've since stepped out and now defining this new southeast lobe. And so you can kind of understand the path to be able to double the size of this near term. And when you think about what's a sizable CRD that one should care about, well, when you're getting around the 8 million ton mark, you start to get in 10 million tons, you're getting above average for those. And so when you look at Arizona mining and the Taylor deposit, it was an anomaly. It was a massive, massive deposit. So you think here, we're not even sure how big this is yet, but what we do know so far are the lead and zinc concentrations are of high grade nature. And so far some coming out to it, and even next door over at I-80, higher grade than what Taylor is.
So I'm going to go back here, kind of going back and forth through this slide here. So here is that FAD zone and the extension. Now, we were talking about the importance of faulting and rock packages. Faulting is your conduits that the fluids make their way up to. The rock packages are the permeable rock that allows those fluids to then expand out into a deposit. And as you can see here, you've got a growing zone there. But what I would point out also to people is that rock package continues and it's going towards that. And it's going towards that Jackson fault that you talk about.
Yeah. And so that is all still relatively untested. There's very few drill holes in that deeper offsetting geology. It's an Eldorado dolomite. It's the host rock. And it makes you think of what is this down dip extension? If you flip a couple slides forward, Allan, I can show you why we think that this is
one
going. About 3 more. One more after this. There. So slide 17.
Slide 17.
It must be a bit delayed. There you go. That's the down dip extension right there and you can see that's that consistent star that makes up that defines that underground historic resource, which we've sort of consistently put out through this presentation. You can see that above that red line. Yeah, right there. So that's above it. That small little patch right above the red line. Yes. And then the rest of it we have.
Oh, okay. So this is the historical stuff.
A little bit to the left, right there. You can kind of see the star right there. That's right.
Okay.
And so we have generated this image with historical and Paycore drilling. Historical drilling is in black, green drilling is Paycore drilling. Now you can see down dip specifically all the way to 729, which is in that far right corner. That's right. These are the basically the gist of the holes that were drilled in that purple geology that you just showed in the slide previously to this. That's all the down dip extension. So that's all the host rock that could typically host this type of mineralization. So we noticed that, I mean, this is all historic data. And again, this was drilled in the 40s and 50s. So they didn't have too much of a focus on drilling down dip. They were focused on doing the test mining on the main zone. And so this is where the upside is for us. This is where we plan to try to explore this entire 1 kilometer down dip zone where we hope to be able to pull in some. So if you look on some of those holes there where you were, so you can see, so specifically 607 on the bottom there, you can see those highlights there. Those are what's interesting about this, and which you have to pull your eyes to, is that there's multiple horizons of mineralization, and that's very typical of CRDs. They tend to follow the structure and they form a lateral, and they tend to go up a structure and form laterally. So you would think that possibly some of those could link up.
Sometimes those models kind of remind me of floors of an apartment building with a elevator going in to each level.
That's right. That's a really good way to actually put it. And so for us, that's, right now we want to be able to define and expand that high grade zone, which is around where we already have a existing resource. So the idea is, let's prove to the market that there's the lateral continuity. Let's step out from that, define that high grade, and we'll continue to step down dip.
And I would go back to this one here, because this really tells you about the plumbing system and the favorable rock, and also the intersection of two important veins here right at the contact, or two important faults right at the contact. So you're not really arm waving. This is all in the right package of rock, and it also has the right plumbing system that is the answer for why this got there.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And when you think about so the Jackson fault, and I'll just note to further expand on what you said earlier, it was the Jackson faults and the mineralization that we're seeing associated with that, it's higher up in the stratigraphy. And so it's not the FAD main zone right there sits around 2,400 feet. The mine shaft goes right down to 2,400 feet. It's got water in it right now. We're not even interested in dewatering it and doing rehabilitation on there right now, because we first want to prove up a deposit of size before we decide, okay, now it's of size, now we can go back and mine this. It's not even in our thought right now. It's, let's just explore, let's do some drilling on this and try to expand this. So if you go a few slides down, one more right there. So slide 14, this really, when you zoom out, you really kind of see all the focus. You can see in the footwall, you can see the mine shaft, all the drilling goes right into the heart of that deposit. That's where the mine shaft was. That's where all the focus has been. When they just, and on the other side of the Jackson fault to the right, where I say new mineralized corridor to test the Jackson fault, that the hanging wall, no one focused on that. And that's why we're excited about it. It's a completely different target, but again, it's all associated with the discovery that's been made along that fault on Hilltop next door. And I believe that, we can see that I-80 is drilling about, a couple 100 meters from our property boundary. They're drilling a geophysical target. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens here in the next few months, because about a week or two ago, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, I-80 announced that this has become a priority target for them and that they're putting 6 drills on the Ruby target. And so,
and to put that into context, Christina, and I'm a big fan of I-80 Gold, but they had the Granite Creek project, which was their #1 project about 6 to 8 months ago. And it looks like a multi-million ounce target. sitting in the same kind of rocks as a 25 million ounce gold deposit, not too far from it. So for this Ruby Hill project to overshadow something like that is a pretty big statement, because I think that Granite Creek is a world-class project. And now it looks like they've got an even better project at Ruby Hill, where they're finding this phenomenal CRD that looks just like what you guys have.
Yeah, I think both are of high level of importance to them, both projects. I believe that now that they've had some focus on Ruby, they realize that the polymetallics here are going to be larger than the gold. And I think that's also why you've seen this the past couple months, they announced a scoping study that will turn the current mill leach scenario into a base metal processing scenario, which will be able to process a lead, silver, and zinc concentrate. So that's huge for us, because that will be just next door, and that just took away a significant amount of capital that we would ever have to do on focus. Should we decide to have some type of agreement with them next door to process any of our material at their operations.
Well, and that's interesting too, because between you and them, over $80 million has been raised or is being raised in the past month. And, that's a pretty significant chunk of capital that's coming into this immediate Eureka trend area where you and I-80 Gold are so focused.
Yeah, it's a lot of work to do in this area, and a lot of upside in terms of targets and being able to, we have the, on top of the Ruby Hill mains, the FAD main zone, then there's the Jackson Fault. And then we still have this near surface oxide target, which we have not focused on really at all. We've only drilled 2 holes there. And largely the focus is because we had an existing resource to work from. So we decided, let's focus on the main zone. Let's try to grow some volume and size to this. So in this upcoming drill program, you're going to see a large amount of our holes focused on that FAD main zone, but we're going to allocate some holes over to that Jackson Fault, because it's obviously going to be a new discovery corridor.
Well, you brought 2 things up that are important there. Up here in this oxide zone, for an oxide discovery, you're looking at a pretty high grade. And a couple other things stand out to me. You can actually see the alteration from Google Earth in this oxide zone. And notice that it is also in that same rock package and associated with this fault here.
That's right.
So it's more proof that you've got a big and powerful mineralizing system for both CRD and overprint of high grade to bonanza grade gold.
Yeah, you can see the purple there, and that structure, the purple was largely near the right there, right? The purple at the bottom, that was probably once connected to the surface. So you look at the past production there, which you can see on your left side of the screen. It's a little bit blocked, but that first bullet point, about 80% of that production in that first bullet point was mined right from there. The second bullet point. The second bullet point, 1.6 million ounces of gold mined at 0.9 ounces per ton and 38 million ounces of silver at 21 ounces per ton. About 80% of that was from there. So you think that was done in the late 1800s and the early 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you think about the geology all together at one point, and it's been down dropped because of this fault, us geologists like to think of that's Ruby Hill just been offset at depth now. One's oxide and one's going to be sulfide. But again, it's the idea that how big can this be? And we'll drill that. And
actually, I think this map shows a good idea of how big it could be, because as you can see here, these CRD deposits, they kind of will have one level followed and then another level, then more levels. and you're still wide open to keep going. And even you got mineralization on the other side of the Jackson Fault.
Yeah, that's right. That was one outlier hole. Again, it's completely untested out there. And when you think, it's largely because when this was drilled in the 40s and 50s, I mean, you can imagine waiting for drill results when it was taking them 9 to 18 months to drill one hole in the 40s and 50s. That's incredible to think as an investor sitting there waiting for results. Like that was just unheard of. We don't have no investors have patience for that now. So there wasn't a lot of deeper drilling. We will look at also doing directional drilling. And just for those that don't know what that is, if you picture the handle of a rake and the spokes of the rake being sort of one drill hole being the pole of the rake, and then those bristles of the rake being all holes that come off one hole. So you're effectively saving a lot of capital by drilling what's called a mother hole and then wedging off holes to test that mineralization. So I know that I-80 is doing that right now next door, and we'll watch the success that they have over there, and we'll look to doing that on the FAD main zone, because it's going to be a capital saving mechanism for us to be able to drill those holes and some of the deeper ones that we would like to do.
Something that stands out to me here on that hole on the other side of the Jackson Fault is it's 6 meters of 13 grams of gold, 220 grams of silver,
That's
half
feet.
a percent. Pardon
That's
me?
feet. That's feet.
Oh, sorry, feet.
Sorry.
And 0.5% of copper, and then no data for the zinc and lead. Was that because they didn't assay for that?
Yeah, that's right. And some of the holes they didn't. And in fact, in the late 1800s and early 1900s, they didn't have a way to process the zinc. So they threw it on the dumps, from what we understand in the literature that's in our database. You can see on the right side, as they got into when Hecla had done the column on the right where it talks about the metallurgical recoveries.
Oh, okay.
On the sort of the lower half of that page, you can see some of the initial recoveries, but that was done in the 70s. Well, we have far better technology even now, that more modern day technology, where we believe that those metallurgies can be improved even more. And Jim Gowans, as you know, and one of the best metallurgists in the world, and he spent a large part of his career with Barrick, and he looked at these recoveries and thought that we could improve them with more modern day technologies.
And you've got one of the best in the business to do that work, or to help you with that effort.
That's right.
Still,
we're doing
87
work right now, and just to understand the oxide target and to understand more of the elementals of the FAD main zone.
But even with that 1970s method that was probably not optimized, you're still looking at 87%.
Yeah, you're still good. Yeah.
89% gold, 77% silver. Nothing to sneeze at there, Christina.
Yeah, I know, but it'd be good to improve them even more now that we know that there is better methods to do so.
Well, I really believe that Paycore is a very undervalued story and a tremendous opportunity for investors. I think you've done a wonderful job of the exploration, and also on your share structure. Having that opportunity in a good share structure story is hard to come by. So good on you guys, Christina.
Thank you. Yeah, look out for news on, the other part of the story is that we have all of the historic data now. We received two weeks before Christmas, we received another, 8 to 9 boxes, and we're in the process of going through all of that data right now and going to digitize it. And so because we needed the assay certs, we needed the coordinates, we needed a lot of the data to be able to correlate with some of the old core that we found. We found a building of old core that had 20 holes in it with anywhere between 2,500 and 3,500 feet. So that's just, now that we have all of the data, the assay certs to support, and the drill and the data to support those holes, we're pretty thrilled that we're going to be able to use all of that data to likely support an NI 43-101 resource estimate with a lot of capital savings, given that we won't have to drill all of that footage now that we have those holes. So we are in the process right now of relogging all of that core, because we don't know what they didn't know back then in the 50s. We certainly know that they didn't know Carlin, because Carlin wasn't discovered until 71. And so we're in the process of logging all of that core, and we'll run that program concurrently with the exploration program, where the drills are going to start up here in the next couple of weeks.
So sounds like
I think.
You got lots of money. You're cranking up the truth machine in a couple of weeks. So we're going to have a lot of news to talk about in the not too distant future, Christina.
Yeah. We just got to get the snow to melt a little bit up there.
And then, of course, you also are keeping an eye on what's happening next door to you, because that's very relevant to what you're looking at.
It absolutely is. We learn a lot from what they're doing next door as well. And I think that they'll learn from us as well. Structures don't stop at a border. They run right through, as we know. And so.
And the rock packages, they also don't care about claim boundaries.
Yeah, and a lot of this structure hasn't been tested, so it's an incredible to think that 50 to 60 years this area has not been drilled. And I think on both sides of the border, we're going to be able to create some exciting news over the next few months.
Well, I've said it before, and I'll say it again today, that I think that this area around Eureka is going to become one of the most important, if not the most important, exploration region in all of Nevada. And that's saying a lot.
Thanks a lot, Allan.
Well, I'm going to close things off, Christina, but thanks again for an update to our audience. It looks like I might have lost Christina there, but I was going to wrap it up anyways. And I just wanted everybody to know that, I'm always looking for undervalued projects. And I think that they have one of those undervalued projects. And now they've got all the money that they need to get aggressively drilling. And when you look at what they've already found in a company with only around 40 million shares out and a reasonable valuation, I think that they offer a pretty unique and remarkable story, investment opportunity for those that like to be involved with gold, base metals, exploration in Nevada. And I think they're onto something quite terrific. On that note, as always, my shows are for information purposes only. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.